Live. Wow.
Hey everybody. Very happy to be chatting to Leigh Russell, who is going to start us off with telling us a bit about herself and her books and what's special about today.
Okay, well, first of all, yeah, so we've got to stop talking about your misspent youth. And I just want to say, first of all, that I don't know how long UK Crime Book Club has been going, but I remember when you started out, and I remember the excitement when you got to 1,000 members. And how many are you now? I mean, how long have you been going?
I think we started in 2016.
Wow, so that's like, it's only 7 years. And how many members have you got?
Over 25,000.
It's incredible, isn't it? It's really incredible. I mean, you are just tireless in your support of crime writers. And so I just, well, for myself, and I'm sure for all the other writers who ever tune in, just want to say thank you so much for all your support and all you do. It's a fantastic community. But yeah, today is a little bit special because today is the publication day for the ebook for Without Trace. I'll just hold it up, which is the 20th book in my Geraldine Steele series. And there's the spine, and that's the cover. And all the covers have been redone. If anybody ever looks at my books on Amazon, you'll see, or indeed in bookshops, you'll see that they all have new covers, brand new covers. So that's just something my publisher did, and it's quite exciting, I suppose. But I'm pretty excited to have the 20th book in the series out, and there are more on the way. So the 21st has gone off for editing, and I'm currently writing the 22nd. And I've just got to that stage when, yeah, I think I know what I'm doing. Oh no, I don't know what I'm doing. Where am I going with this? What on earth am I doing? So anyway, I've got a bit of time to get that in. But so yeah, thank you so much for agreeing to chat to me today, because I felt it would be nice to do something to mark the occasion. And what could be better than chatting to you on UK Crime Book Club? So thank you very much.
That's very nice of you. I can think of lots of better things to be doing than chatting to me. But we'll make the most of you having to chat to me on your publication day. 20 books is a massive achievement, though. When did you start writing them?
The first one came out, it's so difficult to remember. I think the first one came out about 2009. And I have to say, when I wrote the first draft for the very first Geraldine Steele, which is called Cut Short, I know I've said this before, but it's true. I honestly had no idea that anybody else would ever read it, let alone publish it. And I certainly didn't envisage it being the first in a long-running series. I just had a story in my head and wrote it down. And I think that's the best way, really, to approach writing. Each book, you just have a story, and you want to write that story as well as you can. And then, what happens with it happens. But I'm still enjoying writing the series. And Geraldine has really grown on me as the series has developed. But what really interests me is the story of the killers and what's going on there and why they're doing what they're doing. And each of my books has obviously a different character for the killer. They have a different motivation, a different way of killing. So that's really what interests me. And I think that's what makes the books different from each other, because my detective is my detective and she carries on from book to book and people are following her. But the killers are all very different, and it sounds funny, doesn't it? But they're kind of fun to write, because I do feel when I'm writing from my detective's point of view, I have to make her plausible. I can't have her thinking or doing something that it's just not believable that a detective inspector would say or do. Whereas when I'm writing from the killer's point of view, I'm completely free. I can say and do whatever, because nobody can say to me, I don't think a killer would think like that, because, oh, really? How do you know? So I have that kind of license to do whatever I want with the killers. So I find that kind of fun. Within fiction, I always say I like my crime to be in fiction. I don't like reading about crime particularly. I find it too upsetting very often. But crime in fiction is just, it's goodies and baddies, isn't it? and tension and suspense and excitement.
We all like goodies buddies in our books, don't we?
Yeah.
So I've asked you this before, I think, but because Geraldine's had a lot of changes over the years, hasn't she? Over the 20 books, you know, she's gone through quite a lot of things and a lot of changes in her circumstances. Do you think there's a point where you're going to stop writing Geraldine? I know you're doing book 21 and book 22, but...
Well, I mean, that kind of depends. I mean, it depends to some extent on readers, because I think as long as people keep buying the books, my publisher is going to want to keep publishing them. And in fact, I did wonder when I got to book 20 whether, you know, that would sort of be the end of the series. But my publisher, I mean, he was very insistent. He said, do not kill Geraldine Steele. Whatever you do, don't kill her in book 20. And they wanted a couple more books. So we're going on with books 21 and 22. And I don't really look that far ahead, to be honest. If they want me to write another one, I'll write another one. I just kind of go with the flow, really. I think a lot of these things are outside your control. I can't control whether people are going to carry on buying my books. And if they stop selling them, my publisher will probably not want to carry on publishing them. So I just keep going and hope for the best. And to be honest, that's really all any of us can do in life, isn't it, really? Just keep going and hope for the best. And, you know, so far so good.
Show us the cover of the new one again. You said they've all been redone, haven't you?
They have all been reissued with new covers. So they all have covers a little bit like this. I'm not sure if I've got any of the other new covers here. I think I've just got this one up here, but yeah, they're all in this kind of vein. But you can see them if you were to just look up my books on Amazon, and you'll see all the covers there.
Do they all have the same woman on the front?
Yes, the same woman, but in slightly different poses and different backgrounds. Yeah.
Nice. Donna has asked already, because Donna has popped on along with Tony Millington and said hello.
Say that again. Sorry, the signal's not that clear.
Donna and Tony Millington have both popped on and said hello.
Oh, hi. Can I see that? Can I see that? Is that in the chat?
It's in the chat. Donna has, in fact, called you an amazing lady.
Do you know what? I'm a bit nervous to try and look for the chat, because I tried to look for it before we went live, and I managed to leave the app. So I immediately got back on okay. But I'm not very used to this app, and I'm terrible with technology. So I'm on and I'm here, and we can see and hear each other, and I'm just not going to touch anything. But hi, Donna.
Okay, I'll read you what's in the chat. Don't worry about it.
Perfect.
Donna has asked if you ever struggled to remember the titles and the order you wrote them in.
Oh yes. I sometimes have to look them up and see which book came where. But titles are so difficult. I mean, I sometimes say it takes more time to think of a title than it does to write the book. I mean, it's not quite true, although I do write very fast. My mother, who's no longer with us, she was, I mean, we're going back a long, long time now. She was a secretary. And when I was a teenager, she taught me to touch type, because, you know, she knew how to do it and she thought it might be useful. And I remember as a youngster, maybe even a child, sitting with a cardboard box covering the keyboard with a hole cut out for my hands to go in, so that I couldn't see the keyboard as I was typing. And that's how I learnt to touch type. And I type very fast. I type much faster than I can write. And sometimes I'm not quite sure what I'm going to say until I've typed it, and then I read what was in my head. It's quite a funny kind of process, really. I don't always think consciously what I'm going to say. It sort of comes out through my fingers. So I type very fast, but it still takes about 6 months to write a Geraldine Steele. But titles are so difficult, because I do feel, and this is becoming less and less feasible, really, but I do feel that as a writer and a wordsmith, because that's what I do, I spend my life playing with ideas and words, I do feel I should be able to think of a title that's original, that nobody else has ever done before. But these days, you know, you think of a good title, look it up on Amazon, and there's 6 books with that title. So it's actually very difficult. My very first, my debut, Geraldine Steele, Cut Short. That was the first book to be called Cut Short. There were no other cut shorts then, but now there are about half a dozen. So it's very difficult to think of titles. As for remembering them, well, this is my publisher's decision. I think is absolutely the right one. It's a sort of sales decision also to help readers, that each of the books has a 2-word title that places it very firmly in the crime genre. And so they all will tend to have the word death or dead or fatal or deadly in the titles, so that readers who don't know my books will see that this is a crime novel.
I was just looking at my Leigh Russell book on my shelf to see if that was true. Mine's called Final Term.
Yeah, Final Term. That's the one before the one that has just come out. Well, final. I mean, that sort of suggests an ending, doesn't it? Although it's not lethal or deadly or dead. I mean, you know, there's a limit to how many times you can use deadly and dead and lethal. But trying to think of a title that places the book in the crime genre so that readers who don't know my work will know what they're getting, it does limit you, really. But the last thing I would ever want to do would be to see somebody buy one of my books and not enjoy it. So readers have to be clear what they're getting when they buy my books. And of course, there are a lot of people out there now who know my name. I'm quite, you know, in my own small way, I'm quite well known as a crime writer. But there are still a lot of people that don't know my name and might just pick up one of my books. So they, you know, it's nice to think they'll know what they're getting. But yeah, titles are difficult, as indeed are names, characters' names. They have to be right, don't they? And they're quite difficult. I had a character in one of my books who was called, he was called Ron. No, he was called Ron. That's right. Sorry. He was called Ron. And then one of my daughters had a friend, lovely guy called Ron. And so I thought, I don't really want to have this rather nasty character called Ron, because my daughter might read it and think, that's, you know, I know someone called Ron. So I changed it to Rod. And I didn't realize back then that you had to instruct the computer to change whole words only. So I changed Ron to Rod. And every time I'd written wrong or strong, it became Roddick and Stroddick, and I had to go through and change them all. So yeah, names are tricky, but they have to kind of suit the character in my head. And names do have a lot of connotations for us, don't they? I mean, I would never, for example, I'd never kill somebody in one of my books or have a really nasty character called Michael, because that's my husband's name, and that has, you know, a nice connotation for me. And I wouldn't use my daughter's names for killers or victims. And it's difficult, isn't it? Because you think of a name and you automatically associate it with somebody that you know. So yeah, there's all sorts of things that go into names and titles. Titles are difficult. Yeah. Thanks for the question, Donna. And if you think of any good titles, Donna, just let me know quietly. Don't tell anybody else.
Or names. I like links in names as well. I've got a friend called Caroline, and she's also married to a James.
How funny.
I know. I think it's lovely, like a weird synchronicity.
Yeah. Do you know what? In life, there are so often coincidences, and we can't get away with those in writing fiction unless you're Thomas Hardy. And I always feel it's a little bit unfair, because fiction has to be believable, but real life so often isn't. So many things happen that you think, what are the chances? I mean, the other day, myself and my 2 daughters were both on the same train without knowing we were getting on the same train, just by fluke. It's not often that I got to London, and one of my daughters rarely goes up, but she had to go up for something. I was up doing a workshop or something somewhere, and we actually met at the station and got on the train, and we told my other daughter, we said, oh, guess what? We were on the same train. And she looked and she said, oh, I'm on that same train as well. Well, you know, if you put that in a novel, people will be, that doesn't really, that's not really plausible, is it? That's just a clumsy plot device to bring people together because you want them to meet up.
I don't know, I think I would believe it. Because you probably can think of a time when something like that has happened to you.
Maybe. I have to think of some other coincidences that have happened in my life that would not be believable. But yeah, I mean, you're right. That's not that amazing a coincidence, is it? But it was kind of fun at the time.
So we had some questions before we went live.
Mm-hmm.
But I've taken a photo of, and we're gonna. My fake talent is that I can read things backwards because that's what the photos come out as. So if I get
sorry.
I stumble, you can correct me. It will be fine. So Wendy Jones wanted to know how long it took you to read each book. You said it was 6 months for Geraldine Steele.
Well, yeah. I mean, it varies. Geraldine Steele books take me 6 months because they're a little bit complicated in that I write mainly from my detective's point of view, but there are also chapters from the killer's point of view, from victim's point of view, from witnesses' point of view, and everything has to, they sort of go day by day through the investigation, and everything has to happen on the right day. So, for example, I can't have Geraldine saying, oh, I saw him 2 days ago, and actually it was 3 days ago. And I find this really difficult. I mean, just for an example, I have a book, a novel out that's set in Seychelles, and I said that my characters were there on holiday for 2 weeks, and then the copy editor pointed out that the action actually took place over 16 days, because I can't count. But that was fairly easy to correct. I just changed it from saying they were there for 2 weeks to saying they were there for just over 2 weeks. But keeping the days and the action in the correct sequence and the correct, getting the timelines right, I find quite difficult. So there's quite a lot that goes into Geraldine Steele, and the plot has to be a little bit twisty and turny. And then, of course, there's the research that I might have to do. So they take me 6 months. I did write a historical novel, and that one took me 3 years because there was so much research to do. And I really wish I had studied history when I was younger, because there are so many amazing stories in history. I'm really getting into reading historical fiction at the moment. So that one took me 3 years. I have a couple of psychological thrillers which were fairly quick to write. I wrote them in a matter of a few weeks, but they're written as first-person narrative, and that's much simpler in that the reader only knows what that character knows. So if there's things that were going on that the reader doesn't find out about, well, that's because the character didn't know about them. But you can't do that in a crime novel written from different points of view. So I would say it would take me anything from 3 weeks to 3 years to write a book. And of course, it depends what else is going on, because sometimes life gets in the way. And I wrote more during lockdown than when we're not on, not in that horrible limbo time. So, but basically, I always say writing a book is not being on a keyboard. It's what goes on in here, in your head. And once I've got an idea, off I go. And I can be completely obsessed with it and just think about it all the time, write all the time. And it just varies, really. Depends how much time I have available. If I've got time, I'll be writing.
Good answer. Mills and here said hi, Leigh, and she said her dog wants more Poppy. And Linda Checkley also asked you about Poppy, didn't she?
Yeah. Okay, Poppy, yes. Well, this arose, as so much does in life, without any real plan. But when I was about 2, I was an Alsatian jumped up at me in the park and snapped at my face. And I only discovered this fairly recently. I have no recollection of the incident, but I think these childhood experiences can affect us even though we don't realise it. And I've always had a phobia of dogs. So when my daughter said to me that she was getting a rescue puppy, I said to her, in all seriousness, I said, if you get a dog, I'm never going to your house again. And she said, oh, Mum, you're going to love her. And she got a dog. And you know what? Oh, my God, it's like a religious conversion. I love that little dog so much. I've now become I'm a real small dog person. I'm still a bit nervous about big dogs, but not scared of them anymore, really. But I can't walk past a little dog in the street without stopping and saying, hello, can I say hello? And I love this little dog so much that I wrote a story about her. And it's a cozy crime novel, as you might imagine, featuring a little dog. And I sent it to my publisher and he loved it. And so he offered me a 3-book deal. So it's definitely at least a trilogy. The second book is out already, Barking Mad. The third one will be out early 2024. And that's called Poppy Takes the Lead. I'm not quite sure why my publisher made the cover of Barking Mad purple. I'm not sure if they're trying to tell me something, but anyway, there we go. Yeah, so as with Geraldine Steele, I actually don't know. I mean, we'll see how it goes. And if the first 3 books sell really well, then my publisher will want more and I'll write more. And if not, then I won't. I mean, we just see how it goes. I don't know if I've got a copy of Barking Mad here to show you the, I haven't show you the purple cover. I have one over there. But anyway, yeah, so just in terms of whether it's a long-running series or not, watch this space. When I wrote Cut Short, it was just a story and my publisher offered me a 3-book deal. I never in my wildest dreams imagined that I would get to 22 books in the series. So maybe the same thing will happen with Poppy. Who knows if I live that long? I don't know, is the answer.
I like your purple theme. I think it gives you a signature author kind of style.
It's actually quite useful because occasionally I've been to a literary festival or something, and then one time I put a message on Facebook. I said, oh, I left a jumper at the convention hotel or the festival hotel. Has anybody seen it? And somebody replied straight away and they said, oh yeah, I saw it, and I saw it was purple, so I knew it was yours, so I picked it up for you and I've got it. And another time I was in a bookshop in the early days, and they said, oh, a reader came in the other week and they said they were chatting to you in the bookshop and they couldn't remember your name, but they said she was wearing purple. And so the manager of the bookshop said straight away, oh yeah, that would be Leigh Russell. So it's quite useful. I mean, my phone, my iPad, my kitchen is purple. But it's kind of a bit silly, isn't it? It's my glasses case. I mean, everything's purple. It's kind of a bit silly, but I think in life, if we have an opportunity occasionally to be a bit silly and it's quite harmless, then why not? We're so rarely free in life, are we, to just do what we want? Purple pen. So yeah, it's just fun. Purple. Actually, it did get a bit out of hand because when my daughters were smaller, they at Christmas I used to get purple paper clips, little purple clips, little purple staplers. I mean, I had so much clutter that was just little purple things that didn't even work properly. I had to say to them in the end, enough, stop. But it's somebody said to me one time, if you open your wardrobe, are all the clothes in there really purple? Yeah, of course they are. And I'm embarrassed to tell you how many pairs of purple jeans I have, because the kind of downside of it is that if you want to buy shoes or trousers or something and there's nothing purple in the shops, there's nothing to buy. So when there are purple jeans in the shops, I have to buy 2 or 3 pairs. And this has been going on for quite a while, so most of them don't fit me anymore, but there we go.
But still, like you said, it's your unique thing, and I think it's great.
Do you know what, Caroline? We are all unique.
We are.
You don't need to wear purple to be unique. We are all unique.
But I think some people really have like their own kind of unique sort of sense of style, and it is great. I like to see people who've got a signature look. It's great.
Yeah, I'm kind of not sure that I would use the word style about me. I'm not very stylish, but yeah, I mean, I just did it because I like purple. It's not. There was no other reason than that, and it's kind of fun. I mean, I don't understand why everybody doesn't love purple. It's such a beautiful colour. I really love it.
You've been asked if you drive a purple car.
Well, I don't drive, actually, so that answers that one. I have a very, well, I don't know about very low, I mean, you know, first world and all that, but I have a relatively low carbon footprint, and I don't drive. I use public transport wherever I can, or walk. So, yeah, no, I don't have a purple car.
I'm with you on that. I tell the kids I teach that I drive an invisible car. I public transport or drive or walk everywhere.
Yeah, it's much better for you. It's better for you. It's better for the environment. And yeah, I used to drive, but I gave up. I was never a comfortable driver.
I've never driven. It's quite nice to have all that free reading time.
Yeah, yes, absolutely, when you're traveling. And you know what? Once you really realize that when you are driving a car, you are in control of a lethal weapon, it's actually quite scary.
I think that's your crime writer mind going there.
Yeah, maybe that's just my overactive imagination.
So you talked about your historical book taking 3 years to write. You had a question about that, didn't you, as well, from before, about Ruth Matheson, saying, do you think you'd write another historical story?
Do you know what? I would love to, because I mean, one of the things that I discovered when I was writing Abigail of Venice was that I didn't really have to think of stories. The stories are there. I mean, history is just so incredible. I've just been reading, I don't know if you've ever read any Jean Plaidy. She's back in the day, but she wrote historical novels sort of before Philippa Gregory, who I also really enjoy reading. I was reading her novel, Jean Plaidy's novel about Eleanor of Aquitaine. I knew nothing really about her. She was married to the King of France and then married to the King of England, and that was Henry II, who was the Thomas a Becket king. And she was also the mother of Richard I, Richard the Lionheart. I mean, just incredible. And I'd never really heard of her before, and she was an incredible woman. There are so many amazing stories in history. So yeah, I wish I was a historian. But as to whether or not, coming back to the question, whether or not I would ever write another historical story, I don't know, because I never intended to write a historical story. I just came across this episode in history that inspired me, really inspired me. It was so interesting. And I do strongly believe that as writers, we don't go looking for stories, because writing can be quite a difficult and very time-consuming process. But I think our stories find us, and sometimes a story comes to you and you have to write it. So the answer to that, as you know, in common with my answer to every other question, I think, is
I think you're quite open to writing a whole range of stuff, though, as well, aren't you? Because you've written a dystopic novel, I think you just write what comes to you.
Yes, and I mean, for quite a while, Geraldine Steele was the only thing I was writing. I never wanted to think of myself as a one-trick pony. So yes, I've written a dystopian novel, I've written a historical novel, I've written standalone psychological novels. And I find it actually quite, I don't know about inspiring, quite sort of exciting to be writing in different genres. So at the moment, there's a Geraldine Steele, which are, you know, a little bit gritty, serious police procedural novels. But then there's the poppy mystery tales, which are just kind of cozy and a little bit of fun. And I like to write different things, not just get bogged down with one thing. I'm the same with my reading. I might read I read Margaret Atwood, The Blind Assassin. I love Margaret Atwood. She writes so beautifully. But I found it a very challenging book. I'm going to have to read it again. Difficult book. It's a kind of novel within a novel within a novel, and it takes a while to actually work out what's going on. So having read that, I would then turn to maybe a James Bond by Anthony Horowitz. I think he's a wonderful writer. I enjoy everything I read by him. And it's nice to mix it up a bit. I don't like to read too many dark novels or too many light novels. I guess I get bored very easily. So I might read a Graham Greene, and then read an Ian Moore, just complete contrasts. And it's the same with writing. I like to be writing different things in different styles. I like to be reading different things.
I really enjoy Margaret. We've had this discussion before, haven't we? I love Margaret Atwood's books.
Shall I say that again?
Yes, we've had this discussion before because I love Margaret Atwood's books.
Yeah, she's wonderful, isn't she?
I have a signed book by her somewhere on my collection because she came to Ilkley Literature Festival.
Wow, that's amazing. Yes, such an interesting woman, such an interesting writer, such interesting ideas. I read some short stories by her recently, and the ideas are so interesting.
Was that The Old Babes in the Wood?
Yes. Have you read it?
Yeah, it's at the side of me. Yeah.
I mean, the story where she's writing about this couple who are getting older, and she looks at the modern world and she thinks, we didn't have any health and safety. We didn't have any of these things when we were younger. We'd go off hiking. There were no mobile phones. Nobody knew where we were going. We just went off, and she said we didn't think of the dangers. We were oblivious. And she said, I think now we were better off being oblivious. And I think to some extent, I agree with her. I think we're so concerned all the time with safety, and children aren't allowed to just go out and play. I know there's a lot more traffic than when I was a child, and so children can't go out and play. But when I was about 7, I used to go off to the woods with my little friend. Can you imagine letting 2 7-year-old girls go off and play in the woods by themselves these days? I mean, it just wouldn't happen, would it? But I don't know if we've become a little bit too overcautious. I don't know. But I thought that was an interesting story.
Leslie Lloyd's asked if you can list what books of yours come under what genres.
Say that. Sorry, the signal's just not that great here. So ask me again.
Leslie Lloyd says, can you list what books of yours come under what genres?
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay, so British or UK police procedurals, the Geraldine Steele series and the Ian Peterson trilogy. Rachel's story is a dystopian novel, which the idea for that actually came to me during lockdown. I made the decision not to mention the pandemic in Geraldine Steele partly because I didn't want to date the books, but also because I didn't want to think about the pandemic. Because for me, fiction and writing is an escape from life. And there we were, stuck at home in lockdown. We didn't know how long it was going to go on for. And there were times when we were thinking, is this it now? Is this our life now? So I didn't want to think about the pandemic, but it came out in a different way because I wrote Rachel's story. And the premise of that is that there is a pandemic, a disease that not only attacks human life, but attacks all life on Earth. So that was the basis of Rachel's story. My historical novel, Abigail of Venice, is set during the Renaissance in Venice in the 16th century in the Jewish ghetto of Venice. And what else have I written? Yeah, I've written The Adulterer's Wife and Suspicion, which are psychological standalone thrillers. And also the Lucy Hall trilogy. Lucy Hall is a kind of investigative reporter, really, a sort of PI. And those are the first one is set in Seychelles, second one in Paris, and the third one in Rome. And I think that's it. But I sort of lose track of it, really. I mean, I could tell you everything about the book I'm writing at the moment. That is very much in my head. But once my books are published, I can't explain, but that's it. They're gone on to the next one. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does make sense.
It's probably just as well. Otherwise, I'd get in a bit of a muddle probably with Geraldine Steele.
Well, you're talking about Rachel's story. Trisha Matthews asked you if there'd be a follow-up to it.
Well, I mean, not at the moment. I think I wrote that book because it was something that arose in my head during lockdown. And I don't think at the moment I'm in such a kind of dark place in my head. I'm more cozy and writing about a cute little dog. But possibly, you know, maybe if I'm feeling a little bit miserable at some point, I might write another dystopian novel. I would be quite interested. I mean, Trisha said she'd love to know what happens to Rachel next. And I did have ideas about what was going to happen to her next. And I would actually be quite interested to follow her story. I know I write the stories, but until I'm actually writing them, I don't always know what's going to happen because things have to feel right. I think I know what's going to happen in a book. But as I'm writing it, that might change because something I thought was going to happen in the book might not actually work or might not seem right, or I might have another idea as I'm writing it. So yeah, it would be fun to know what happens to her next. So yeah, maybe there will. But I think it's not on the cards at the moment. At the moment, I'm busy writing the next Geraldine Steele, and I'll just see. There are no plans at the moment. That's all I can say. Doesn't mean that I won't wake up tomorrow and think, oh my God, I've got the next Rachel story in my head. I've got to write it.
So what I need to do is kind of send you subliminal messages to wake up with a new Rachel story in your head.
So say that again. Sorry.
So Trisha just needs to give you subliminal messages to wake up with a story in your head.
Yeah.
And then shall we go for the difficult one from Carol Martin? Who's your favourite author of all time or writer of all time?
Yeah, that's not actually difficult because it has to be, for me, it has to be Shakespeare. Because I think he had such a mastery of language, just utterly brilliant. And I mean, just take the line, to be or not to be. That is probably the simplest verb in the English language, isn't it? To be. And yet, in that one line, to be or not, that's one, to be or not to be, in 6 one-syllable words, he's saying, what is the purpose of existence? Why are we here? Why should we carry on living? You know, it's such a deep question, isn't it? In such simple language. It's utterly brilliant. And he really, really, I mean, if you want to know how to use language, study Shakespeare, study the text of Macbeth. It's just utterly brilliant. There's a scene, I don't know if you know the play at all, but Macbeth is planning to kill the king. Now, in those days, killing the king would be like a devout Catholic nowadays killing the Pope, because the king was God's appointed on earth. You didn't, you know, nobody would kill the king. I mean, they did all the time. But he's contemplating killing the king, and he's trying to psych himself up to it. And he has this long speech, which is full of classical allusions, and metaphors, and all this. And, you know, reading this speech, and you're thinking, what on earth is he actually talking about? And then he concludes the speech, I go and it is done. Such simple language, and it's almost like a slap in the face. And you know that that's the point at which Macbeth has made up his mind he's going to do it. He's going to stop talking. He's going to stop thinking about it. Enough with all these words. He's going to do it. It's just genius, isn't it? And I mean, I could go on endlessly. And the alliteration of fair is foul and foul is fair. And then with the witches at the beginning, and then the first words Macbeth speaks when he arrives are, so fair and foul a day I have not seen. And it harks back to what the witches were saying. So you know there's some kind of link between Macbeth and the witches. They have some sort of control of him just through the language. I mean, if he was alive nowadays, he would probably be writing the most effective advertising slogans, because he just used language so brilliantly. So he is my favorite writer of all time. But I have a lot of other writers that I absolutely love, and I'm a sucker for beautiful prose. So we mentioned Margaret Atwood. She's one of my favorites. Graham Greene. You read the first page of Power and the Glory and you're right there in the scene. Kazuo Ishiguro. They just write so beautifully. And but I have lots and lots of favorites.
So what have you been reading recently that you've really enjoyed while we're on the reading?
Well, I read this this Jean Paley, Eleanor of Aquitaine. Before that, I read an Anthony Horowitz, James Bond. What else? Actually, I keep a little list, because sometimes in my newsletter I say, well, this is what I've been reading. So I can try and find my little list if you like, but I don't know if I've got it here.
Someone's posted the link to your newsletter in the chat, which is quite handy.
Okay, yeah. Oh, Rivers of London, that's the one. Yeah, I read Rivers of London by Ben Aranovich. I'd never read any of his before. I was on a panel with him at a literary festival with James Runcie. And yeah, I'm not usually a fan of fantasy or the paranormal particularly, but I enjoyed it. It's a crazy book. I read, Paul, and I don't know how to say his name, Paul Coelho, how do you say it? The Alchemist, which it's light. It's quite profound. I'm not sure it was my favourite book. Then what else? Oh yeah, I came across a writer called Walter Tevis. I don't know if you know him. Do you remember the film? It's probably before your time, The Man Who Fell to Earth, with David Bowie. Well, that was based on a book by Walter Tevis, so I read it and it was very good. So I read a few more of his books. He writes science fiction, sort of. Some were better than others, but he was quite interesting. I read an Ian Moore. We share an agent, Ian Moore and I. So I read Death and Cross one. He's great fun. I'd recommend him. And is that enough? I mean, I can go on.
That's enough. I love the Rivers of London series. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I've read the first one. I say I'm not a fan of fantasy, but you know what? You kind of say these things, throw these things out. But actually, I love Tolkien. I love Gormenghast. You know, there are fantasy books, and I used to say, oh, I don't read dystopian fiction, and then I realised, well, actually, yeah, 1984, Handmaid's Tale, Fahrenheit 451. There are a lot of dystopian novels that are really standout books for me. So. Yeah, I think it's good to read lots of different things, and then you sometimes come across things that you think, well, I never thought I would enjoy that. It's amazing.
See, Rivers of London's kind of urban fantasy, isn't it? I love that kind of stuff. I am very much not a fan of Tolkien.
Oh, really? Oh, I love Tolkien. And
I like The Hobbit, but anything after that is a no.
Yeah, and Game of Thrones.
Apart from his translations of stuff, I like his translations of things like Sir Gawain and the Green Knight and things. I will read his translations of stuff.
And even the Narnia books. I mean, I read them when I was a child, but when we went into lockdown and I was feeling, as I'm sure we all were, feeling a bit miserable, and I sort of wanted to do some comfort reading, and so I reread one of the Narnia books. Really enjoyed it. I think it was The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, which is probably my favourite one. But that's fantasy, isn't it? Alice in Wonderland. There's a fine line, isn't there, between fantasy and reality.
Fantasy. But some people can write fantasy. If you think like people like Terry Pratchett wrote fantasy, but it was essentially like social satire.
Yes, yeah. Really sad. So sad he died. And also, oh, what's it called? You know what I mean? The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I mean, the opening scene of that is just so funny, isn't it? I don't know if you remember it.
I do. It's a good book.
Yeah.
And that, again, you can sort of see that really clever, witty writing in those. I think people can dismiss kind of genre books of any kind and not realise that there's often really amazing quality writing in them.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think good quality writing is a must for me, really. Although I have read some things that were not as well written, just because they're great stories and they just carry you along. But another series, I don't know if you've come across the Shard Lake series by C.J. Sampson.
I've heard of them. I haven't read them.
I was the same. I'd heard of them, and loads of people were talking about Shard Lake, and I wasn't even quite sure what that was. And then he won the CWA Diamond Dagger a couple of years ago, and so I thought, okay, I really should read these. And I read about 6 of them just in a row, and then I've sort of kept the 7th one because I don't want to finish the series. They're very good, very good.
They're kind of historical. I like historical.
Yeah, they're set in the 16th century time of Henry VIII. But they're murder mysteries. Have you read the Cadfael series?
I haven't.
They're a bit cozy, but they're lovely. You know, if you're in the mood for kind of cozy crime that's historical, I'd recommend them.
Yeah, I do love a historical crime novel.
Yeah.
But yeah, any kind of historical fiction in general is a win for me. So we've talked about this before, but you've got quite a big role in CWA, haven't you? Because you judge there.
I chair the judging panel for the CWA Debut Dagger Award, which is a lovely award to be involved in, because this is an award given to unpublished writers. So they submit the first 3,000 words of a novel plus a synopsis. And then the judging panel, it's myself and literary agents and acquiring editors for major publishers. We are then sent a long list of a dozen entries, and we would then ask for another 3,000 words later on in the novel, because sometimes the narrator changes in a novel, so you can't always get a full idea of somebody's writing just from the first 3,000 words. And then we select a shortlist, and then we all meet for lunch and select a winner. And writers who are shortlisted, and certainly ones who go on to win as well, almost invariably go on to get publishing deals, because agents and publishers look at their work, look at their submissions. So it's very exciting to be helping new writers on their way. I also run the CWA critiquing service, and that's another way in which the CWA helps aspiring writers and published writers as well, because writers can submit either the opening for a short critique or a full novel, and we do a critique, a 5-page critique, and I coordinate that. And that's also, it's nice to help people. I've been doing a little bit of mentoring writers when I have the time. It's nice. I mean, I just feel that I've been so fortunate. I found a publisher straight away. I've got a lot of books out. I've been, in my own small way, I've been successful. It's nice to be able to put something back. And a lot of very successful authors have been very kind to me and supportive to me on the way up. Leigh Child, Jeffrey Deaver, Peter James, Martina Cole, and Linwood Barkley. I mean, there's a lot, and more recently, Mike Craven. So I think the crime writing community is a very supportive community, and I've certainly benefited from that myself. I mean, just chatting to somebody like you, that's hugely supportive to me and my books. So it's nice to be able to, support other people on their way up, as it were.
So we've gone all around these things, and we're meant to be talking about Without Trace. So what can you tell us about that without giving away any spoilers?
Well, oh yeah. First of all, talking about giving away, I did offer a signed copy to well, anybody who would like to sort of, I don't know, drop you a message and or however you want to do that, we could have a signed copy. Without Trace. Okay. So
we could always pick our favourite question at the end of the chat, maybe for whoever wins a signed copy.
Yeah, however you want to organise that. I'm happy to. I think it would have to be UK only. That I'd send a signed copy out. So the premise of the book, Without Trace, I have to stop and think which one it is. Yeah. So Geraldine Steele's partner, Ian Peterson, he's concerned because a friend of his tells him that his girlfriend has disappeared. And Geraldine is not that interested in this because she doesn't deal with missing persons. She deals with murder inquiries. But she agrees to just have a look, just, you know, to keep Ian happy, as it were. And so rooting around, they discover that I think 2 other girls have also just disappeared within a very small area. And so this is a little bit unusual. And then a young woman is discovered. She's on the pavement of a street and she's covered in earth, but she's nowhere near, you know, the earth. She's just on the pavement. And she's been quite badly assaulted. She's taken to hospital. She dies. So this then becomes a murder investigation. And as Gerald is investigating, I think that's when she finds that other girls have also disappeared. Anyway, it's all very puzzling, and they're not quite sure what on earth has happened. And well, that's how the book starts. And I won't tell you anymore.
No,
other to say there is a killer.
They're often set around York, aren't they? The books.
Yes, Geraldine Steele is living and working in York. Yeah. Her series started in Kent. She was in Kent for 3 books. She then moved to London for another, I can't remember, 4 or 5 books. In the meantime, her Sergeant Ian Peterson, who had his own trilogy, he leaves Kent, where he was working with Geraldine. He wants to go a long way away to get away from his in-laws, so he ends up moving to York. And then something happens to Geraldine, which I won't tell you what, but she has to leave London. She gets demoted. And so at that point, she had to leave London. So I thought, oh, well, she can go up to York and rejoin Ian Peterson. So, yeah, she's in York now, and I think she will stay there. She's been there, I think, Without Trace is her 10th book in York. I think she's probably going to stay there, although who knows? She is there in the 21st. Actually, I do know. She's there in the 21st book and she's there in the 22nd book. So.
And then, I mean, there's not a lot of actual crime that happens in York, but it does have quite a long and interesting past, doesn't it?
Yeah, York is quite a safe place to live. They don't actually have a dedicated murder team in the police station in York. If there is a murder, which is unusual, then a team will come down from Northampton. But in my world, fictional world, they have a dedicated murder squad in York, and there are 2 or 3 murders in every book, a bit like Midsummer Murders, really. And the history of York is incredible, really. I mean, from the Romans, the Vikings, it's a really, really fascinating place. And that's really why I chose to move my books to York, because it gave us an excuse to keep going back there to research, you know, find places where dead bodies can be dumped and go to Betty's tea shop.
There's plenty of places to go, isn't there? I don't think I've ever been to Betty's tea shop.
Oh my goodness, we should go.
I think, well, I might have been in once, but I think if you live in Yorkshire, it's just not a thing that you do.
I mean, you know what? When we were in Harrogate, well, we I mentioned it was Michael's birthday when we drove up there, so we went to Harlow Car Gardens, which are absolutely beautiful. It was a lovely day, and there's a Betty's tea shop there, so we went to Betty's, and then we actually went to Betty's again on Saturday for lunch in Harrogate. So yeah, we like Betty's.
But yeah, I think it's definitely one for the visitors to Yorkshire. I think Betty's.
Oh well, okay. Well, yeah, I guess we're tourists then because we like going to Betty's. But you don't know, you've never been there, so
I don't know. No, I've never.
do you know what you're missing?
No.
We always drink Yorkshire tea. We like Yorkshire tea.
See, I don't drink Yorkshire tea. I don't drink tea though, so I should have widened that out as a comment, shouldn't I? I don't drink tea at all.
Do you drink coffee?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I just drink decaf. I've given up caffeinated coffee. I just drink decaf, but I do drink tea.
Yeah, my parents are very Yorkshire tea.
It's funny, isn't it, what we end up chatting about when we were in Harrogate? I mean, one morning we were having breakfast with Ellie Griffiths and Mick Herron, as you do in Ramswood. And what do you think we were talking about? Michael and Mick Herron were chatting about the cricket. And here we are.
About cricket at Harrogate, and I was like, I hate cricket. It's so boring.
I know. But it's funny, isn't it, what we end up chatting about? I remember one of my very first crime panels, and I was on a panel for debut authors, and one of the panelists was Mike Hodges, who was the director of the original Get Carter film. I don't know if you ever saw it, this iconic film with Michael Caine. And we were chatting to him afterwards, and I was thinking, my goodness, it's Mike Hodges. You know, he's a really iconic director. Do you know what we were chatting about? Well, I wasn't. Do you know what Michael and Mike Hodges were talking about? They both trained as chartered accountants, and they were swapping anecdotes about their days when they trained as accountants. And I'm sitting there thinking, this is Mike Hodges, and we're talking about accountancy. And it's saying, you know, Mick Herron, Michael, talking about cricket. So we're in good company when we talk about tea and coffee.
Yeah, that's true. Tony Millington has said he missed seeing you in Harrogate.
Yeah, I missed so many people, including yourself. Yeah, but actually, they do very good coffee at Betty's. You know, they have a whole menu of different coffees.
Good. So. Tony gives the best hugs. We definitely missed seeing him at Harrogate. And Donna said she doesn't think we ever really talk about books. We don't. I spent ages at Harrogate talking to someone about random nightclubs in Leeds.
You just chat, don't you? I know. I don't think I talked about books at Harrogate that much with people. I can't remember what I was talking about, to be honest. It becomes a bit of a blur, doesn't it? Because I find going to these places, there are just so many people that I know. And you just want to talk to everybody, don't you? I missed a lot of people. But what can you do, really?
I mean, you always come home with books, which is good, isn't it? That's a good thing about Harrogate.
Yes, yeah.
Home with books.
And it's nice. You can sometimes catch up with people like Leigh Child. You know, he's not over here that often. It's nice to catch up with him because I've known him now, you know, over the years, really. But I missed Jeff Deaver this time, which was a pity. But you can't chat to everybody, can you? There just isn't time.
No,
plus
longer.
I'm kind of I tend not to prop up the bar till 4 o'clock in the morning like a lot of people do. I'm a bit of an early bird, really. So, and we left home about 6 o'clock in the morning to get there, so I wasn't around late in the evening. Can I hear a dog in the background? No, I think it's just the signal then. I thought, do you have a cat? Do you have any animals?
I've got a husband. Does that count?
Well, okay. That'll have to do. That will have to do. In the absence of anything better, that will have to do.
My mum used to tell us when we were little and we wanted a pet, and we couldn't because we used to move house, that we had my dad and that was enough. If we asked for a pet, that used to be her reply, "We've got your dad. That's enough."
So why did you move so often? Is there some nefarious history to
no criminal history. Yeah, we were on the run. So just work.
Just happens, doesn't it? Yeah, it just happens.
Yeah. I mean, my dad was in the army when I was born, so for a while it was army.
Oh, right.
And yeah, just work stuff.
Yeah, because I was just I went to the same school from 5 to 18. Never sort of moved, went anywhere, same house. I don't know how much that affects you. I think I'm less kind of open to new environments and less flexible because I didn't learn to adapt when I was young. You're probably much more adaptable than I am. But
yeah, I think
where do the dinosaurs come from?
Where does that? I don't know. We're just like dinosaurs, and I think it's a good look for a science teacher.
Well, yeah.
Most people know you're a science teacher if you're wearing things with dinosaurs on. So, yeah, no, I've always Jurassic Park is probably where it came from. Actually, I love Jurassic Park, and it is a little bit responsible for what I studied at university.
What did you study?
Human genetics.
Wow, interesting.
But a little bit of me wanted to make a dinosaur. So,
I've got to say that the first Jurassic Park film was really good, wasn't it? I thought it's a shame sometimes when they keep making more and more. I mean, that's something I'm a bit conscious of with Geraldine Steele, you know, writing the 22nd book. I don't want to be one of these writers where readers start saying, oh, you know, heard it all before. I mean, I was very pleased with some of the reviews of book 19, Without Trace. I don't know if you've read that. It starts with a teacher. I was very pleased that some of the reviews were saying it's still fresh, it's still different, even after 19 books. So I'm trying to still make the books, you know, still Geraldine Steele, they're still murder investigations, but how can I make each one a little bit different? But then again, readers like to have things that are familiar and the same, don't they? So it's all a bit of a juggling act.
Yeah, a tricky one. We are at the end of our time. Do you want to, go and show us all the books again? Remind us what everyone's going to go and buy now.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. I can, well, this is the latest, Without Trace, and it's out today on Kindle. So please download it and let's see if we can get up the charts a bit. I did actually reach. I mean, it's number one in some categories now. I have once reached number one overall on Kindle for one of my books, but now I just get to number one in different categories. So it'd be nice to go up the rankings a bit. And before that, well, I don't have a bookmark with all the new covers. I've got a bookmark with the old covers, but of course they won't look like this anymore on the books or online. But that's the Geraldine Steele series with their covers. There we go, with the covers before the latest. And this is the Poppy books. There we are. There's the purple one, Barking Mad. It's called Barking Mad, and it's purple. And as I say, I just wonder if my publisher is trying to tell me something. But you can see the books and links to all the books on my website. That's the simplest thing. If you just go to leighrussell.co.uk, then you can see links to all the books there. And I just hope people keep buying them and write them good reviews. You can be my friend on Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter. It's very easy. Facebook, I'm just Leigh Russell. Twitter, here I've got a little sign. I'm just at Leigh Russell. So I'm trying to think what else I could tell you. Really, not a lot. Keep reading, keep writing. I know there are a lot of writers out there, and it's great fun. And just keep going. I'm always here to try and encourage and help other writers. And try and think what else I can say, really.
But I think you've summed it up perfectly.
I'll probably think of lots of things. As soon as we stop, I'll think of loads. I'll think, oh, why didn't I say this? Why didn't I say that? But I mean, I would like to sort of finish just by congratulating you again on UK Crime Book Club, because it is phenomenal what you've achieved. And I know a lot of time and effort and hard work must have gone into it. But there's also, you've got that kind of magic something, because you can spend a lot of time, put in a lot of work, and things don't take off. And how many thousand members did you say now?
About 25,000. We've got a good admin team, to be fair, though.
That's huge, isn't it? I still remember how excited you were when you got to 1,000 members, and we were saying 1,000 members. That's amazing. And look at you now.
I know, we never planned it, but it's great that it's that. And thank you so much for joining us. It's been brilliant.
Well, thank you so much for having me, especially today when my book is actually published.
Make sure you post a link to your book in the group as well, with my permission.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And I will do that. I'll do that as soon as we finish.
Yeah.